Our cellist lighting words this morning are by Albert Schweitzer. At times, our own light goes out and is rekindled by a spark from another person. Each of us has cause to think with deep gratitude of those who have lighted the flame within us. Good morning on this beautiful Sunday in the warm days of summer. I'm Martha Sincula, your service leader for today, and I welcome you to the Umpqua Unitarian Universalist congregation. Our speaker today is Michael Wheeler, and he will be available after this service for an after-service Zoom discussion at 11:15, beginning check-in. Email invitations with the links to the meetings are sent out between Friday and Sunday mornings. And if you have not yet used Zoom, Google the Zoom free video conferencing tool and download the free app. You can do this on your phone, your tablet, or computer. Follow the prompts and there, you can join us. Otherwise, these discussions are recorded so that you can view them anytime on YouTube, just like our services. Links to all the services are in our weekly UmQuest newsletter, where you can check on the links to get to the services. We thank Michael Wheeler and Lucy Swangham for their work on producing these videos for our services each week. And as we know, it's important to stay connected and make every effort to call people that might need a little conference or a little conversation. Please check in with members of the congregation when you have time. You know how to find us on YouTube. Help others who might need it. and find it difficult to do so that many of us as possible can participate. And of course, since you're using YouTube to view this service, please click on the red subscribe button, and this will make it much easier for you to find us each week, actually anytime. And today, after many requests, we are adding the Cares and Concerns candle to our media services. If you would like your request mentioned during the service, please call me. My phone number is in the weekly Quest under Sunday services, and directly make the request. Our opening words this morning are by Fred Rogers. If only you could sense how important you are to the lives of those you meet, how important you can be to people you may never even dream of. There is something of yourself that you leave at every meeting with another person. Now is the time in our service where we take some time to go inside introspection. We will have a 3-part meditation. First, let's take a slow breath in and a slow breath out. Let us gather our energies as we participate. Listen to the words, spend some time in silence, and enjoy the music. Our words today are by Marcus Aurelius, called Meditations. I have often wondered how it is that every man loves himself more than all the rest of men, but yet sets less value on his own opinion of himself than on the opinion of others. Our speaker today is Michael Wheeler, our Director of Music. Michael holds a master's certificate in music theory, harmony, and ear training from the Berklee School of Music, a Bachelor of Arts degree in music history from Charter Oak State College, a Master of Arts in ethnomusicology, which is studying shamanic drumming, Eastern Orthodox chant, Indo-Persian sacred music, and folk dance of the British Isles. Also, a Master of Fine Arts in music composition from the Vermont College of Fine Arts, and a doctorate of sacred music from the Interfaith Theological Seminary, where his dissertation, Examination of Meditative and Therapeutic Dance, as practice for well-being was referred to as groundbreaking. Outside of his musical studies, Dr. Wheeler holds an advanced diploma in philosophy, psychology, and sociology, as well as being a certified life coach through Arcology Ltd, UK. He is an ordained minister through the International Metaphysical Ministry, during which time he developed practices of meditation and hypnosis. His primary focus in ministry is examining the role of the story in shaping of the self and community. He is also our director, videographer, and editor of all our recorded sermons that you're seeing every week. Doing excellent work, he is. Thank you, Michael.
Hello, everyone, and a very happy Sunday to you. For most of these talks, I am usually most inspired by the things I've personally been studying and the things I've personally been dealing with. And I figured that if one of us is coping with things, it's likely to assume that the rest of us have similar struggles. One of the texts and philosophical traditions that I have always relied on in periods of strife is the philosophical tradition of Stoicism, and especially the works of Epictetus, and of his works, especially the Enchiridion, or the Enchiridion, depending on who you hear pronounce it. If you were to summarize the philosophy of Stoicism, it would be, in my opinion, and it's echoed in a quote that I'd like to read to you. It is the idea that we can recognize the things within our control and the things that are not within our control. And the things that are within our control, we seek to make the best of the situations available to us. And the things not in our control, that we allow them to pass. Epictetus writes, "There are things which are within our power, and there are things which are beyond our power. Within our power are opinion, aim, desire, aversion, and in one word, whatever affairs are our own. Beyond our power are body, property, reputation, office, and in one word, whatever are not properly our own affairs." Now, of course, there's some wiggle room in this, because he says within our power are opinion, aim, desire, aversion, and I suppose for the most part those are pretty locked down. But take, for instance, if you were starving, right? And if you were starving, food was what you desire. Now, that is an extension of the body. That ravenous need for food when you're starving, you don't really have that much control over. However, I think what Epictetus is saying is that a disciplined mind is able to set up the parameters of our own desire. Interestingly enough, he also says that body is not within our control. And I would like to push back against him a little bit in this talk, which is really having the level of health and having the level of body that we desire, right, which is in our control. And it doesn't end at just the body. I believe that there is a parallel between the physical, the mental, and the spiritual. And when we seek to better ourselves in one dimension, we can take those lessons and better ourselves in the other dimension. Now, of course, I try to make these topics as sexy as possible, and the truth is, who's to say if it garners more viewers or not? But a lot of people are interested in specifically weight loss. But I would say let's steer away from weight loss and talk about bodily health, and then by proxy talk about spiritual health. And I was racking my brain this week, really trying to think of a analog for fat, because in the strictest sense, in the physics sense of the way our bodies operate, fat is really potential energy. But for those of us who have been overweight or significantly overweight, energy is not usually what we feel. On the other hand, it is the body's ability to sustain itself through long periods of famine. Now, trying to think of a metaphor for fat in the spiritual sense is really difficult, because if we are spiritually consuming healthy things rather than what we might think of as garbage, right? So let's say, for the sake of simplicity, watching an hour of a Wayne Dyer lecture versus watching an hour of pornography, one could be considered to be spiritually very nutritious, while the other is, in my opinion, very spiritually damaging. By the same token, the foods that we choose to ingest are either nutritious or they are potentially damaging. For instance, if you were to eat a healthy salad of organic vegetables and whole grains and lean proteins, that's probably going to yield a lot more health than if you were to indulge continuously on Big Macs and French fries and sugary sodas. But both in the physical sense would translate to stored energy in the form of fat, which in our modern age is what seems to be what most people want to lose or to leave behind. So in that strain, I wanted to postulate a few parallels, and maybe we can talk about it through the Sunday service. So before I do that, I wanted to share kind of an inspirational story, and this was the other night. I was driving and my car was virtually on empty. I pulled into a gas station, and there was a man there, and we looked to be about the same age. And I don't know why this matters to the story at all, but it seems like it does. So he's a black man, middle-aged, and like me, some very distinct white in the beard, very manly-looking guy. But I pulled in, and he was carrying the tray of cash out of the island where they have things like cigarettes and, where they run credit cards and things like that. And he points at the sign in the window of the larger building that said, that it was 9 o'clock, and because it was 9 o'clock, the store was closed. And I didn't see it, and I was like, oh, I'm so sorry, and I was getting ready to drive off, and he says, well, how are you going to pay? I said, I was going to pay by card, but it's okay, I'll go somewhere else. And he asked me to pull in, and he filled my gas, and it was a very kind thing for him to do, because he didn't have to do it. I don't believe that he really made any extra money by accommodating me the way that he did. Truthfully, he only lost about 5 minutes. I only gained about 5 minutes. There was another gas station down the road, but he chose to help me out. And I really wanted him to know that I appreciate it. Of course, I was very thankful. I said, hey, I really appreciate you taking the time to do this for me, to fill up my car, officially after the store had closed. And in my wallet, I had just like $3 spare, and so I tipped him $3, for which he was very thankful. Now, the thing I want to keep in mind while talking about this is both of us, in truth, lost and gained very little, but the goodwill, at least displayed to me, is something that I carry with me. And I think, in times that I'm frustrated or I just want to get going, like, for instance, if I'm standing in line at the post office, I think back to that encounter and that example that man set for me. gives me that extra bit of patience to say, well, the world is not going to end if this takes 5 minutes longer. All right, so lesson number 1 in the spiritual weight loss or physical weight loss lessons is that no one can do it for you, right? No one can do it for you. So imagine, if you will, that you're in college. In theory, if you wanted to, especially these days with online and remote learning, you could, and there are services online who do this, pay someone to write all of your papers, to take all of your exams while you sit back and watch Netflix reruns throughout your 4 years of college. And there is a good possibility that you could graduate with a 4 years bachelor's degree, really having learned absolutely nothing. Now, of course, you could make the argument that once you get out into the world, you're not going to have the skills that you should have obtained during those 4 years of college. But that's a discussion for another time, perhaps, because we'd have to talk about the efficacy of higher education, and that's a whole ball of wax that we don't have time for. But you would get that diploma. You would get that recognition, assuming that no one was the wiser. Now, if your goal is to become physically fit and physically healthy, there is no such option for you. And I think the same is true for the spiritual option as well, that if your goal is to become kinder, if your goal is to become leaner by, saying, dumping that spiritual or psychological baggage that you have, that's work that you have to do yourself. Now, of course, you can hire a personal trainer to help you out at the gym the same way that you could seek spiritual counseling or psychological counseling. But in the end, the work is your own. So let's start that work. And if there's some way that I can help, I am anxious to do that. I feel that service is necessary for our own spiritual well-being. Number 2 is that you have to confront your tendency towards hedonism. And this is absolutely my Achilles heel. I can tell you that especially in times of grief and especially in times of strife, there is no food that ought to be off limits to me. And it is a great tragedy that I enjoy the junk food as much as I enjoy the fine foods. I always said I am equally comfortable around Doritos as I am around caviar, and I enjoy them both. Not together, though. And again, Epictetus has something to say about this. He says, you must watch, you must labor, you must get the better of certain appetites. You must quit your acquaintances, be despised by your servants, be laughed at by those you meet, come off worse than others in everything, in office and honors before tribunals. When you have fully considered all these things, approach, if you please. That is, by parting with them, you have a mind to purchase serenity, freedom, and tranquility. If not, do not come here. Meaning, do not come to the realm of the philosophers. And that is, if you want to be enlightened, if you want to be spiritually centered, you cannot dig into the world of the physical like you can if the physical is your only aim. If the physical is your only aim, then you will by necessity only understand the physical. So people may dream of a life which is full of pleasures. They may dream of life with endless sex and endless food, maybe even drugs and alcohol and cigarettes, all of these things that give momentary pleasure. But what I would argue is, and this is something that the Mormons make a big point of, is that what harms the body can also harm the spirit. In the way that it harms the body, it is damaging the body. It is feeding toxins into the bloodstream. It is potentially causing cancer. It is putting on unhealthy weight gain, for instance. In the spiritual realm, I would say it is an absolute violation of that first of the Ten Commandments, that thou shalt have no other God before me. Now, you don't have to necessarily believe in God in the Christian or the Judeo-Christian sense. That's okay. But can God represent what is our highest aim? And if we put the physical pleasure, and especially the damaging physical pleasure, in front of what ought to be our highest aim, then are we really living to our greatest potential? When we look back on our life at the end, are we going to say to ourselves, I'm so glad I ate all of that pizza, right? Or I'm so glad I did all of that cocaine. I'm so glad I smoked all of those cigarettes. Or I'm so glad I made the amazing connections with other humans that I did. I'm so glad that I was charitable in those times. I'm so glad that I forgave, right? Again, we have the idea of the nourishing and the damaging. The final is that you have to do a little more. And this is what everybody who's into weightlifting will be able to tell you. Because the body, and again, the spirit, right? If we're using the body as a metaphor for the spirit, has an amazing ability to adapt. That the stresses put on the body, whether it be weight or cardio, like running outside in the sun, running in the heat, will adapt to its environment. In weightlifting, your bones become denser, your muscles become more adept to lifting heavy objects. And so you have to continuously do a little more. And this takes me back to that very kind man in the parking lot of the gas station, because he had an option to do only what was asked of him. But instead, he decided to do a little more. He decided to be a little kinder. He decided that he was going to show me 3 minutes to 5 minutes of compassion. And because of that, that unlikely minister made me think kinder on the world. And for that, I'm grateful, because it is easy, especially in today's climate, to be bogged down in the negative. And I think it's vital for us to find those little blessings, to find those little miracles of kindness and compassion in order to help us keep going. I have often said that whatever's happening at the national level of politics, we have very little control over. We have very little to do. By all means, you can go out and vote for what you think will help make national and world politics better. But what we do have control over is the environment that we are immediately surrounded by. I would say that $5 spent at a local charity is going to go much further than $5 spent at an international charity. And by the same token, what we can do for our community is incredibly dwarfed by what we can do for ourselves. So with that in mind, I think we should discuss this. What weight are you carrying that you want to shed? Right? Be it physically or spiritually. Of course, because this is church, I'd like to think of it as spiritually, but there may be a physical component to it. I truly believe that we are a composite being of spiritual, mental, and physical. So what is it that we have to shed? If we are parts of a greater organism, meaning the Umpqua Unitarian Universalist congregation, what parts of the congregation might we have to shed? As always, I am so grateful for this time with you. I hope you have a beautiful Sunday, and let's talk about it.
Our closing words are by Dr. Seuss. Today you are you. That is truer than true. There is no one alive that is youer than you. Shout loud, I am lucky to be what I am.